We had a blast at StarCast 6. A huge thank you to everyone who attended. And if you want to relive our stage show experience, you can with Premier Streaming Network. Over 20 stage shows took place StarCast weekend. From comedy shows, design panels, musical performances, talk shows, and more. Including a live edition of AEW Unrestricted with CEO Tony Khan. Sign up for Premier Streaming Network today and check out the shows available now on demand and in HD. And if you sign up today, you'll get 2 months free of Premier Plus. Enjoy the amazing lineup of content that Premier Streaming Network offers, including all 5 previous StarCast stage show lineups. Hundreds of hours of fantastic wrestling content at your fingertips. Visit StarCastOnPremiere.com.
The recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Well, hello, Conrad Thompson. Happy to see you. Loving your voice. I can tell you've been on the road. Back behind your right shoulder and left shoulder, we still have some belts missing, but that helps me focus on you. Your smiling beach bum face. You've had a weekend of just a box of fluffy ducks, buddy. Connie, before we get into, I can't wait. We're finally going to do the payoff. We've done false finish after false finish after false finish, but we're going to get into my friend and yours, Jeffrey Hero Hardy from Woe to Go. And we've touched on a little bit, but he's a man that I love dearly. We go way outside of professional wrestling, been on family trips and all that. So we're going to get into Jeff Hardy, but we've got a little catching up to do. Shout out to Dave Green. Got a lot of chatter to
a lot of chatter.
But I guess first things first. So a little headline came across, I believe, last Thursday at kickoff. And it said something to the effect, this man signed the largest contract in NFL history.
Oh, goodness gracious. Were you talking about that nothing happening Joe Burrow again?
Yep. Oh, Joey boy. Oh, clipboard Joey. So our man, Mr. Park, Mr. Joseph Park, a.k.a. Abyss, a.k.a. producer extraordinary of Mr. Boogs.
100%.
Friend in mine.
Yeah.
Who said, not 1, not 2, not 3, but probably 4 Super Bowls before it's all over and done with. They got taken to the woodshed by the Browns. What do you say?
As I understand it, the richest contract in NFL history netted 0 touchdowns, 82 yards, 45.2% completion ratio.
Woo!
And a QB rating of 52.2. I think his offense collectively, what did the richest NFL contract in history net you in your very first game? How about 3 points? Not 3 touchdowns, but 1, 2, 3. That's the end of the match. Abyss is out of here. The worst fantasy football player of all time.
Yes, sir.
The Browns, the fucking Browns. Bernie Kosar says hello. That's how long it's been since they were worth a damn. Beat them 24-3. I don't think we will ever. Who day? Yeah. Who day dumb enough to pick Joe Burrow? My goodness, Abyss. Let's stick to Rick Boogs, respectfully.
Oh, my Lord, Conrad. My world listeners.
You know what Abyss and Burrow have in common?
Both losers.
On Sundays, on game days, whether it's a boatload of barbecue at my house ready for Abyss, or that fabulous NFL gridiron. When it comes down to it, neither one of them going to show up.
They don't show up.
Oh, no-show Burrow, no-show Abyss. You know, your dad used to live in a house owned by George Jones, and as I understand it, they used to call him No-Show Jones.
Yes, sir.
From now on, it's No-Show Burrow and No-Show Abyss. The only thing more pathetic than that over the weekend was the most embarrassing home loss of Nick Saban's career. Jeff
laid an egg. I was shocked.
At home. The most shocking part was the way the O-line got blown up. We got sacked on a 3-man rush. I've never seen that before in my life. Like, I understood, hey, guys, it's a sophomore quarterback. This is the biggest game he's ever played in. It's only his third start. He's an athlete. He's going to have to settle in, you know. And then how about this, man? Texas had their game face on.
Ooh,
Archie Manning, I don't reckon he's going to see a ton of playing time this year. Shout out to Sark. Another one of those Saban disciples who he picked up, dusted off, and got out there making waves again. One of the biggest programs in history. We had Matthew McConaughey and Vince Young running around the sidelines. It was a super fun environment, super fun game, especially for the Longhorns. Congrats to them. There were like 50 private jets in for that game. Jeff, that's a big deal in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I mean,
wow.
It was dozens and dozens and dozens of PJs. Again, you know, they have the biggest, most successful booster program in the history of college football. Archie Manning's making more than NFL quarterbacks, and he ain't even taking a snap. It was really impressive. Congrats to Coach Sark for coming in, having his boys ready. And, man, the Longhorns did it. I don't know if you saw the pettiness, but last year when Alabama went to play Texas in Texas, they stuck our band, the $1 Million Band, as we call them, in the tippy-top nosebleed upper deck seats.
No, they didn't.
Not to be outdone, we did the exact same thing. Those boys, they knew the weather forecast about 48 hours before we did. They were so damn high in that stadium. I'm hoping that now that next year they're in the SEC, we can all get along a little better. But, yeah, I mean, my favorite part of this, Jeff, was all night Saturday night and certainly all day Sunday. Boy, all these Bama fans on social media, fire Nick Saban. Are you an idiot?
No, they didn't.
Oh, dude, he's won 6 titles, and they're like, but we lost a game. Do you expect perfection every time? My goodness. It's okay to lose a game every now and again. He won you 6. Is that not enough? Let's bronze his wiener.
It's week 2.
What are we doing?
It's week 2.
Dude, if you're going to lose, get it out of the way early. And by the way, seeing what I saw with the secondary and the offensive line, probably at least 2 more losses coming our way. Now, I'm not sold on one of those being from Tennessee.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
In the second quarter, I saw y'all tied up with a junior college. And I was like, what in the world is going on over there? And then, of course, imagine my embarrassment when we don't even get a lead until the third quarter. So it is what it is. It's not going according to plan, but we're still here, by God, and I'm going to take my lumps. So I'm ready to eat more crow anytime you're ready to serve it.
Tell you what, my world listeners, if you're not a football fan, and there, like I said last week, there's some folks across the pond that enjoy our chatter and have no idea. So I apologize in advance because it's football season. And my good buddy, me and Conrad like to go back and forth. But I just one more comment on kind of the football weekend at my Titans egg. Prime time.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Prime time. I got to hear your thoughts on that because it is, and you know, we're talking college football. The ratings, I sent you that one screenshot from last Thursday night. There's no telling what the ratings did Sunday, NFL. Saturday, that Bama game. Texas has a national audience. Bama has a national audience. It's going to be through the roof. But prime time, first game out of the box Saturday morning, Fox big kickoff show. They were already talking about what this number is going to do. But what's your thoughts on old prime time?
I think it's fascinating that one guy can have this effect on a program. You know, like they didn't always sell out their games. They didn't have the best attendance, and their get-in price for their game this past weekend was more than any NFL home opener.
No way.
Yeah. Like he's selling out, and they agreed to pay this man more money than they could actually afford to do it. And it turns out that was a worthwhile gamble. Lots of experts were coming out ahead of time saying they had the worst team. They couldn't get the players, blah, blah, blah. He's got his guys motivated. I for one, am for it. I love when we have something that goes against the grain. I like when, guys like Lane Kiffin come into the SEC and start talking trash and shaking it up. I'm excited to see what Coach can do because, man, Deion has I loved his little rant last week after week 1's victory where he goes, I've always been him. I've been him my whole life. I was him in Little League. I was him in Pop Warner. I'm him now. You shouldn't be surprised. It's not a surprise to me. I love that swagger and confidence. But one of the things I saw him do on the jerseys, I don't know if you've seen that, but he doesn't allow the word captain. So there are no team captains.
Yep.
He's got guys running around with an L on their shirt because they're the leaders. And the guys on defense who are the playmakers, who are the headhunters, who are running around looking for turnovers. Not only do they have a throne on the sidelines, which is fun, but he calls them the dogs. So they got a D on there. I think that's super fun, man. Calling your captains leaders. I think it's a great net positive for college football. Congrats to, Colorado. Just the idea that they have some momentum and people talking about them. That hasn't happened in maybe 25, 30 years. Good for them.
Yeah. It's again, we go back to, and we're talking football, but I always kind of like to draw it back. That's why I like these intellectual conversations, the human interest story. Burrow got paid, came out. He didn't practice. Jimmy Johnson, Terry Bradshaw, they buried him yesterday. Like, Burrow, hey, bud, you can get all that money, but if you don't practice, then Saban, I can't believe social media, but they're talking about he gambled early in December in the transfer portal on this quarterback or some, I don't know, all that, but it all turns into human interest stories. And the private one is the best example because if that isn't a perfect example of hope, what's at the very core of Deion's, I guess you could say, at the very core of everything, he comes in with hope. He is selling hope to all those players, and man, are they buying it because, geez, sellout stadium. I didn't know that about the price tag, but them diving in, taking Nebraska out in the second half, selling out. Did you see what the Suns the quarterback Deion's son did too? Did you see him wave the watch?
Yeah. Not only that, he had the Wu-Tang Clan there on the sidelines. Like, this has become
no way.
The Wu-Tang Clan were there.
Oh my gosh.
He's going to continue to use his influence and his social currency to grow that brand and grow the swagger, if you will.
Yep.
I think he's probably the definition of that word in college football. I don't know how that's going to translate long term, but I know he's breathing new life into that organization. And if you're looking to do that with your daily routine, can I recommend AG1? I'll tell you this, Jeff and I start every single day with one delicious scoop of AG1, and you should too. If you're trying to be one of those next level athletes, or if you're just trying to be more productive at work. My wife does it on the way to the gym every morning, and she feels like she can tell a difference when she misses a day with AG1. But maybe you feel like you're tired of taking a bunch of different supplements and you want one single solution that supports your entire body and helps you cover those nutritional bases every day. Maybe you're looking for better gut health or a boost in energy, or maybe just trying to support that immune system with everything that's going around right now. Maybe you hate taking pills and vitamins and you just want a supplement that tastes great. I'm telling you, dude, AG1 checks all the boxes. You're going to cover your nutritional basis. You're going to feel like you're doing something good for your body. You're going to feel unstoppable, ready to take on the day. And you're going to be feeling that way because you're giving your body the nutrition it craves with just one delicious scoop of AG1. You see, AG1 replaces your multivitamin, your probiotic, and it's really like a micro habit with macro results in one simple drinkable habit. It's a science-driven formula of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food sourced nutrients, like 75 different ingredients all told. And all of these get together to support you to create more energy and focus and strength and clarity. I feel like I'm more focused in the afternoon. I can be more productive longer at work. And if you sit in front of a computer all day like I do, in the afternoon, man, sometimes you feel like you're getting that crash. Not with AG1. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Just go to drinkag1.com/myworld. That's drinkag1.com/myworld. Check it out. You'll be glad you did. So Jeff, listen, we're having a lot of fun talking about football. Of course, we got it.
Oh, are we back? AG1. I'm hyped up on my AG1 and a little Rocky Top. Folks, if those don't know, that's the Tennessee fight song. I'm just getting prepared for the Florida Gators this weekend. What do you say, Connie? What do you say? UT or Gators?
UT. The Gators. I think they'll struggle to have a 500 season this year.
Okay. Who do y'all have this weekend?
I'll be honest, I've been too depressed to look.
I'll be honest. I would not want to be this team.
I don't know it's going to be that bad, but it's South Florida, and
it'll be ugly. It will be ugly.
Next week will be the real test. We're playing Ole Miss, and then in 2 weeks we'll be playing Mississippi State. In 3 weeks, Texas A&M, and I don't know, about 6 weeks from now, number 11 as they're ranked right now, Tennessee. They're going to cruise on down to Tuscaloosa. And we're ranked number 10 right now. We'll see what happens in the meantime, though.
We dropped. Weren't we in the top 10? No.
I wouldn't have put you in the top 10 then, now, or ever, you know.
Oh, Connie.
Hey, Jeff, I'm not sure if you saw this or not, but one of the greatest minds in the history of the business is now a part of what we're doing over at adfreeshows.com. Mr. Kevin Sullivan joins us each and every Tuesday. We call it Tuesdays with the Taskmaster.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, Kevin talked about who the mastermind was behind the spray painted NWO belt. And I wanted to play this clip for you. I think you'll dig this.
Was that your idea to spray paint the big gold belt with the NWO?
Yes, it was. Hogan and I were he made me the booker. Sometimes he would listen to me exclusively. Sometimes, doesn't work for me, brother. I was close with Kevin. I was in Florida when Scott started. So I had a little bit of a legs up than most of the guys. And I said to Hulk, that's your belt now. It shouldn't say world champion on it. It should say NWO on it.
So we're going to go ahead and play the rest of that clip at the end of today's episode. So stay tuned to the end of my world. We'll play the rest of that conversation that we had with Kevin Sullivan. Of course, those shows run about an hour. You're not going to get the full hour at the end of today's show, but we will finish that entire clip at the end of today's show. But we're doing that each and every Tuesday, along with a whole host of other bonus content you don't want to miss from Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick and Hacksaw Jim Duggan and everybody who does stuff on our platform. They provide bonus content each and every month over at adfreeshows.com. But our topic today, Jeff, is somebody who you hold in high regard, arguably one of the most charismatic, one of the most quote unquote over. And you and I have a friend in the business who says that people throw that word around too often, that over doesn't mean what people think it does. They think when they come out and there's a big reaction, oh, I got a pop, I must be over. And he sort of makes the analogy, when you're really over, it's hard to just live normal life. You can't just run down to the Walmart, take the wife and kids down to Outback and not do a meet and greet on the way. That's when you're over. The Rocks, the Hulk Hogans, the Stone Colds, et cetera, et cetera. I think you could argue that our guy today, Jeff Hardy probably has to do a meet and greet on his way back from the mailbox. Like, that dude is, of the modern era, one of the most over acts of this generation. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, without question. And we're going, so it's funny that you led with over. So let me ask you something. Or early, Conrad, it might have been before I even broke in. I'm trying to think. But how would you define over? And I know you just said, meet and greet, and that, can't leave the house without a meet and greet. But like,
here's my example. And I use this all the time in my real life, because as you know, I've had the opportunity to, I've had the privilege to work with a who's who of talent over the years through our StarCast conventions. So you get not only independent stars, but the current television stars, the stars of yesteryear, Hall of Famers, legends, world champions, international acts, mainstream celebrities, etc., etc. But every now and again, you run across somebody who, they think really highly of themselves. You might say they're arrogant, if you will. And my dad might say, boy, he's full of himself.
Yeah, I was going to use that one.
Say, he's getting too big for his britches. All these different Southern expressions.
Yeah.
But I often say, if I walked with them into Walmart, we could buy groceries for the month and run through the checkout and load them up and be unbothered.
Yeah.
But if you're just because I've ran across this in my real life, where you're just out somewhere and people are like, oh, and I happen to have been with Ric Flair when that's happened. I don't know, 1,000 times. Like Ric Flair just walking through an airport becomes a meet and greet. Like it's challenging to move. That to me is over when you don't have to. I don't have to wear my own merch. I don't have to have theme music. I don't have to have pyro. He doesn't have to be wearing the robe. He doesn't have to be strutting and putting people in the figure four or calling people fat boy or cutting his forehead. You don't have to do any of that. He just exists, and people are like, oh, "Are you?" Oh my God! That's over to me. How would you define over?
I think context is king. Not to go on Uncle Eric's one of his, but generally speaking, and this was, my grandmother and my father's kind of viewpoint. And I guess there's a lot of metrics, a lot of barometers, but basically needle movers.
Yes.
Is something that you can say move the needle, because you can take 5 guys and put them in a lineup. Dutch used to always give that analogy. Put them in a lineup and see how many people off the street, not at a wrestling show,
Yes.
Can pick them out. Also, all right, who's moving the needle in merch? Who's moving the needle in quarter-hour ratings? Who's, all the normal metrics, but moving the needle, because early in my career, and I'm talking about the first year or maybe 2 years, I'll say in that second year, Conrad, I had, gotten away from the initial angle, and maybe when I started using Simply Irresistible. No, but when whenever I was in tag matches, when the ball kind of started rolling off of that initial angle, next match coming up, Simply Irresistible, I may get a good pop and go to the ring and have a good match. And then I'd, get in the car and hear my dad talk, or hear my dad and Dundee or Dutch or whatever it is. And he's just like, they're talking and like, man, we got to get some guys over. We got to get some guys over, and I'm thinking, now, hey, I'm in the back seat over here, but we would have had fun with it, my dad. But then when my dad gets serious, he's like, son, there's such a difference. You going out and getting a good pop, you ain't going to sell a damn ticket by yourself. We got to get you there. And that was like spot shows. And then, I kind of finally kind of evolved into that, where, okay, running spot shows, I got to have Jeff on it, that kind of thing. And I guess there's just different barometers, but like you said, nowadays, you hear that where all the guys over, and I'm thinking, now, what do they really mean that? And it's become such a common term that I think people say it not they're just out of naivete or ignorance. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's just like, no, they're not.
The definition of ignorance. They just don't know any better. I mean, I think, let me take a stab at what you were saying too, because I echo what you're saying in that I think a lot of times, and you and I have said this before, WWE brands themselves based on WWE. It's, hey, WWE's coming to town. Once upon a time, maybe that wasn't the way all promotions were done. There was a singular act or a match. And the needle mover thing you're talking about is a certain amount of people are going to see a WWE show just because it's a WWE show. So that is your baseline hardcore. If WWE's in town, I'm going fan base. But when we add a name featuring so-and-so, and now we can see that there has been a jump in tickets. Like John Cena right now is enjoying a return for several weeks to WWE. I would venture to guess they will feel that needle move.
They've already seen it on live events.
In ticket sales, in live events, in merch. He is a value add. And so if the brand in and of itself is going to draw the same, whether you're on the show or not, are you really over? Versus if your name is added and now all of a sudden there are more tickets sold, now you're over. And how much you're over is TBD, right? But we saw when Cena came back before, we certainly saw a boost. Like I think there was one show, maybe it was a Boston live event or a Boston TV show, or it was Raw or SmackDown or whatever. They announced Cena and sold an additional like 5,000 tickets. That is over. Would you agree?
I was at WWE when he was added to a Raw anniversary or something in Laredo or something like that. It was like he was added. Boom. I mean, there was just an article about on the SmackDown. He's going to be at SmackDown every Friday night. You don't think that's a hell of a strategic move? You think he just happened to show up in India? You don't think that's strategic? Just along the lines. I got another one for you, Conrad. That's while we're in this, and folks, we are going to get to Jeff Hardy, but and I'll give you my testimony on my firsthand experience on a talent being over. But recently, Conrad, your friend and mine, Mr. Meltzer, put out a tweet. And it said something to the effect, Dennis Rodman had zero effect on ticket sales and ratings. And I kind of did my head scratcher. And you know as well as I do, kind of the deal, how it all went down. It was last minute. So he's probably accurate on the ticket sales because of how society buys tickets today. But in the ratings, the quarter hour he was in is the only one out of the 8 that was higher than the prior one. So I'd say he moved the needle. Now, was it drastic? I don't want to get into all that, but he did move the needle in a positive way, and it was percentage-wise quite a bit up, and which made me kind of dive into. I just wanted to get a couple of folks, and I said, hey, man, help me out here. And we went back and looked at that original tweet that went out, Conrad, and comparatively speaking, all the other tweets that were put out over that weekend. Conrad, nothing was even close to it. Now, is he going to sell a boatload of wrestling buys?
Well, by the way, it was announced the day before, Jeff.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not. Yeah, I mean, look, we could. And I'm not here to poke holes or positive, negative, all that. I just we're talking over. Yeah. I was surprised at how much traction on a Friday afternoon, late Friday afternoon, one tweet ended up being over 2 million impressions.
2.8 last I checked.
Wow. Folks, and relatively speaking, I don't think they break 100,000. Yeah, I mean, I don't think. For the general. So it's way up there. But the quarter hour ratings, what I was like, damn, and it opened with good old Mr. Schiavone in the ring and Dennis and all that. But it's the only quarter out of all 8 that had a nice little bump. Now, look, again, this can be taken in so many different ways. Does it translate to this? Does it translate to that? But we're kind of talking about what's over and what's not over. He made a difference in the metrics of his person on his social media, which I believe translated into the Saturday Night Collision bumping their quarter hour. Now to create revenue out of that the next night, well, that's then you get into progressions and all that kind of stuff. But we're talking about Cena. They purposely put him on advertised 6-8 Friday nights. That's kind of, hey, tune in on Friday nights. That's going to help us get ratings. But the ticket sales is black and white, and the India deal, my gosh, that gets into multiples of re-upping the contract. So good, healthy discussion, pal.
Jeff, as we're talking, I just quickly perused the Twitter feed.
Okay.
And the biggest announcement or the biggest post in the last handful of days was the Tony Khan tweet about Bryan Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr. at Wrestle Dream, which truly is a dream match. 507,000 impressions.
Okay.
The second biggest that I can see is a fabulous match I'm really excited about, which is happening next week from Arthur Ashe Stadium, Claudio versus Kingston. And that had 403,000 impressions. So those are your two sort of big tweets in the last few days. Meanwhile, a multiple of that for Rodman. So we can say, we can be critical of that if we'd like, and certainly people have been. But you and I know what the investment was, and we know what the return is.
Mm-hmm.
So when you strip away what you like, which is very subjective, and we look at it objectively as a business, and now, it's charts and graphs. It's not close. It was a fraction of the money and delivered 4 times the result or the impressions. So with all that in mind, let me just say this. Every now and again, we need to be a little business-like in our approach to business. And you and I talked about that business at the top of the show when we're talking about that nothing happening abyss, an old no-show Burrow. Well, I want to remind you right now that football is back in full swing with another week of epic games. And who's got you covered on the action for every single one of them? DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet $5 on football and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Nobody's missing out on the action this season. All DraftKings customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game this September. Get in on the NFL Week 2 action with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use the code MyWorld to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and take home $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook. With the code MyWorld, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for gambling problems by calling 888-789-7777 or visiting ccp.org. Please pay responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in ONT. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Jeff, we're finally here. We're finally going to talk about our man, Jeff Hardy. He has had such a storied career. The definition of over, you and I would agree, certainly applies to Mr. Hardy. If you have an opportunity to have the Hardy Boys at your event, whether it's working an indie show or doing fan meet and greets, by all means, go out of the way to do so. You will have more customers. You will have happier fans. You will sell more stuff. Mr. Hardy is over like Rover. And maybe the first place that a lot of fans really took notice of Jeff is the night you finished up in the WWF. It was that incredible ladder match at No Mercy, October of 99. It was Matt and Jeff against Edge and Christian. Lots of rumor and innuendo that we might see that match again somewhere out of Jacksonville one day. But that really became the precursor to tables and ladders and chairs. Oh my. These guys, man, they were special right away. When did you have a chance to see that No Mercy 99 ladder match? Did you see it that night or later?
Later. And Philadelphia was the Nitro the next day where I went. And guys were talking about it in the locker room there. Like, hey, of course they're going to say, hey, we saw the China deal and all that. And, some folks had already begun to kind of hear the P-Shooter story, but they were talking about, damn, that match was off the charts. And you kind of go back and look, gosh, Conrad, feeling the age, or not feeling the age. This is October of 99.
Yeah.
All four of those guys. Was Matt and Jeff still with Michael Hayes at this time?
I don't recall.
Yeah, but it was, all four of them were just kind of, I don't say just coming on the scene, but they hadn't been around long, and them tearing the house down. And, we're talking right in their peak Attitude Era, which was, it goes without saying, lots of character development, lots of shock jock, it was all the different characters. I don't say this was the first match because the Hell in the Cell and all this, but utilizing tables, ladders, and chairs with four guys that could flat out go, it turned a lot of heads. And you look back on the, shall I say, historical significance, maybe this is where those guys, Matt and Jeff, had their breakout in every act, whether it's music, acting, TV, movies, any kind of form of entertainment, even sports. You kind of have that breakout moment where the whole world steps on notice, and they kind of say, all right, that didn't happen by accident. They can go. Well, this was it for them.
We know that they would go on to achieve just immeasurable success in the tag team division. I think you could argue that the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudley Boys really breathed new life into the tag team division and created some WrestleMania moments and some real moments for the WWE universe that will echo in eternity. So many of those clips were seen in the opening and in all the packages for WWE for years and years and years. And there for a while, tag team wrestling was not really the priority in WWE. We went through that phase, before the generation before them, where it was like two big stars we just sort of throw together, whether it was Foley and Austin, or Foley and The Rock, or Shawn and Austin, or Owen and Bulldog. But, the tag team acts before that, respectfully, were the Headbangers and the Godwins and the Body Donnas. And it wasn't a focus, maybe like it had been with the British Bulldogs or the Hart Foundation or the Rockers or Demolition. But they really ushered in a new era of tag team wrestling and this high stakes stuff that we had never seen before. Certainly ECW existed. There had been ladder matches and tables and ladders and chairs and that sort of stuff used in a match before, but never at that high of a level, with that level of an audience. And some of the stuff they pulled off is just legendary. And then they decide to do what everybody does. We at least try to push Jeff as a single star. I say everybody because it feels inevitable that, the Rockers are going to split up. The Hart Foundation is going to split up. The British Bulldogs are going to split up. That is the course that most tag teams follow. And we saw Jeff have some really iconic moments in that ladder match against The Undertaker as he's climbing the ladder, and JR has that iconic call, "Go make yourself famous, kid." There's so much momentum there. And then he finds himself released in April of 2003. Now, just to give everybody context, TNA at that point is less than a year old. TNA started in June of 2002. So here we are about 10 months later, and one of the top acts and somebody who was young and charismatic and over, he's available. Are you immediately in hot pursuit? Or do you feel like there's some other things you need to navigate before you feel comfortable bringing him in?
Kind of diving in, I'm just going to back up just a little bit, because going back to we'll call it the early 80s of US, it wasn't called US, my father's promotion, Fabulous Ones, Rock and Roll Express. Sheep Herders, there was my old man loved tag team wrestling. He thought the stories could be better. The WWE, I think, is much or more from a financial perspective, because you want to pay two guys as opposed to four guys, and that's why tag pay was lower, and there, the tag team division just wasn't there. But I think the Road Warriors changed that. They were the trendsetters. They You know, they were in the territories. They got to Crockett, went national. Then there was, like you just said, Demolition, and then Powers of Pain. You know, there was just, I don't say cookie cutter, but it even got into the, you know, there's so many different tag teams, but they had kind of eased away in the mid 90s, like you said. And I think Matt and Jeff were the first, not the first, but they were like the rock stars. They just kind of, Jeff had that vibe. That Jeff still has that vibe today as the whatever lead singer you want to throw out there. David Lee Roth. I mean, you could go in any kind of lead singer of a rock band. Jeff's always had that kind of charisma about him. And I can remember watching Monday Night Raw, Jeff climbing the ladder, the anticipation, and me thinking, there's no way Vince is going to do this, but God, wouldn't it be awesome if he did?
Yes.
And then I just, you know, as the match ebbed and flowed, I just was thinking, damn, Taker, you're not just good, you're great. Because everybody in that arena, and I, even at Taker's peak heel persona, he still had the cool hit factor in a lot of ways.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, all this, but he was the heel, the antagonist, and man, they wanted Jeff to overcome that. And you know, another little sidebar of this, Conrad, thinking of that run, I had a buddy of mine, and again, I'm in startup mode. We're doing one show a week, and so I'm immersed in is the business from a business perspective more so than I had probably ever been in my life. And I'm, you know, WWE's the blueprint. A buddy of mine went to a Bowling Green house show / live event during this kind of run, Conrad. And they essentially said there was 6 to 8 SKUs of WWE merchandise and 8 to 12 SKUs of Jeff Hardy merchandise.
Wow.
Yeah. And that it just, yes, he was over, to go back to our thread. But when, you know, when I hear that he's available, shock might not be the right word, but Vince had dealt with, I don't want to give to, you know, let's just say whoever you want to put in that basket, Ultimate Warrior, you know, folks that Vince always figured out a way to monetize them on his terms. But for them to release Jeff, and I knew the cash cow that he was at the time, it really surprised me. And, you know, I immediately wanted to kind of dig in. Is he an option for us? You know, dig into what's going on and what the realities is, and even if he had any interest. Because again, you know, me and Jeff and Matt met each other in the early 90s, mid 90s.
So you're interested in reaching out. Do you have, I mean, are you just using our underground railroad of wrestlers where everybody knows somebody, or did you have his number? Were you that tight with him at that point?
I would imagine I had his number, and if I didn't have his correct number, I reached out and got it somehow. I don't really remember, but yeah, I mean, I had.
Isn't that interesting that somehow, some way, we can all sort of get somebody's number fairly easily? I've always been fascinated by that. That, you know, in a business where it's supposed to really not be a team sport, everybody's sort of out for themselves. You and I occasionally run across something and we're like, man, I wish I knew how to get a hold of so and so. But that little network that exists, man.
So let me ask you, Conrad, were you ever a guy, again, maybe showing a little bit, that like my first cell phone / mobile phone did not have a Nashville area code. I had an AT&T, and they only offered up 770 area codes for this cell service. And it's like, okay.
So that's a North Georgia area code.
Yeah. And that's, I had that until, you know, now anyway, got changed over. But I can remember kind of carrying that around in my bag. Did you have a black book, a phone book of numbers?
Everybody did at one point. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know if I mean, I just can remember different guys and scratching this number out. That doesn't work anymore. And here's this. And here's his answer machine, and the almighty, here's his pager number.
Did you ever have a Rolodex? Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah. No. Well, yeah, I did. Yes, yeah, actually, I did. I had a big stack of business cards and ended up saying, hey, I got to organize these. It's all gone by the yesteryear, but yeah. But how the hell? Oh, no, Hardy's number. I was like, how did we get on Rolodex?
So he has a couple of matches on the Indies. And then he debuts with you guys on June 23rd, 2004. It's the second anniversary show, and he's going to be here in a match against AJ Styles. It's supposed to be a one-off. So I understand that he wasn't signed to a deal yet. And I'm just curious, how does that come to be? What was did he feel like I'm going back, so I don't want to sign anything? Or talk to me about how you landed him and why it was a one-off.
I could almost give you maybe the word for word conversation after we got the niceties and how's everything going and this and that. Hey, Jeff,
can I guess?
Yeah.
I want to play music.
Oh, no. As far as Jeff response?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Well, that was once we got into him playing his own theme coming out, which,
okay.
Yeah, all that. But it was simple. Jeff, there's no way we can pay you what you're worth. So
okay.
That's off the table. We also, pal, and this is the real deal, know that if it's not now, at some point you're going to be thinking about going back, and that may be crazy, but Jeff, we're all businessmen, got to leave our options. So all I'm really talking about to you is one date for an opportunity. And I think if we remove the money component of it, it could be as good for you as it is for us. We would love the shot in the arm. And I don't know where your head's at, but what is the downside? Of course, we're going to take care of you creatively. And let's just see if you like us and we like you. I mean, just that simple. And that's simple.
What's interesting to me is it happens June 23rd, 2004. So he has like a year off. You think he was just using that time for to heal up? I mean, it's 14 months off.
Had zero interest in the business. Zero. He just, to my knowledge, not to dive into it, he, very good with his money. That, they're not extravagant spenders. And so obviously he's coming off. So at that point, it's 2003 when he got released. So a 5-year run, 4 or 5 year run of good money. Prior to kids, I'd say he was doing all right. But no, he just had zero interest. That image you just popped up there when Marcus put it up there, I can remember. And folks, lots of pops. And I think I talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we tried to do this. I still believe that's the loudest sustained pop the Asylum ever had. It was deafening, and it kept going and going and going. It was something. He milked it for all it was worth, but he didn't have to milk it. That sounds like he was trying to pull it out of him. They were ready to see him. Mega star.
Probably the biggest pop in TNA history at that point.
Oh, without question. And, we had gone through several surprises and, all that kind of stuff, and debuts and storylines and all that. But they were our audience by that point. So this is, God almighty, that's hard to imagine. So this is our 2-year anniversary. Yeah. So 2 years in, the TNA faithful definitely had begun to grow, and they knew who AJ Styles was, and they knew who, the stories and the NWA title and the Raven and JArrett and Truth and 3 Live, whatever it is, they kind of knew our cast of characters. But for Hardy to be coming in, arguably in the prime of his career, was mega deal.
Meltzer, of course, would say that you guys were pushing him on the program as being the hottest free agent in wrestling, and he hoped that this wasn't going to be a Hogan tease, and that you actually were going to be able to bring him in and not just push a guy who left. But Hardy allegedly, according to the Observer, was telling people he was thrilled with the crowd response and that he hoped to be back on a weekly basis. Dave would continue to write, quote, Hardy agreed to do the match on the Sunday before the show. Remember now, this is when TNA ran on Wednesday nights. After the company officials found out Kid Cash had a broken lower leg, Hardy got an incredible reaction, one of the biggest in company history. They didn't boo Styles, but it was clear that once they saw Hardy, a WWE mid-carder, as a real superstar. Hardy, considered a little guy in WWE, was way bigger than Styles, considered a medium guy in TNA, which only shows the illusion of size and that it's all perspective. Hardy had not trained at all and didn't show much other than he was in the right place all the time and Styles stuff looked good. So yeah, the note about size is something that was always discussed with AJ. He's proven since that doesn't really matter. But it is cool to know that this was originally supposed to be Kid Cash's match. When Kid Cash goes down, are you thinking, let me just take another stab at this, and you're surprised when he's receptive? Or was this the long-term plan? You just needed an opponent for him?
Well, we had been on again, off again. Hey, you ready? No, not yet. Hey, you ready? What's it going to take to get you ready? I mean, Conrad, you can imagine, it's just, you've dealt with talent long enough now that, it's one of those things that timing has to be there. And I'm not going to say opponents, but timing of everything. Does it work? And also just kind of where he's at in life and schedule and mindset. But yeah, there was not a master plan, or it wasn't a knee-jerk reaction. Cash is out. We got to have him now. It just
by the way, it almost didn't happen. It's written in the Observer that this wound up being Plan C. Of course, Plan A was going to be Kid Cash. He's down with a broken lower leg. So Plan B is, well, we'll get Jeff in, but Jeff misses not one but 2 flights the day of the show. Now he's in contact the entire time, but you guys have to be shitting bricks in Nashville thinking, well, what are we going to do? So they make a backup plan, which is going to be Styles versus Titus, who's Ryan Wilson under a mask, managed by Johnny Fairplay. But wouldn't you know it, the Survivor couldn't manage to get his ass on a plane. He missed his plane too. So they go with a Plan C, or I guess maybe D at that point. Somehow Jeff Hardy shows up just a couple hours before the match, and we got it. And it is interesting to think about, considering their success later in wrestling, that Jeff Hardy's first match in TNA was against AJ Styles. Fitting, since AJ was sort of Mr. TNA. Boy, if we only knew then what we know now, that was history in the making, no?
Big time. And, as we've done these My Worlds, I kind of, because in the heat of the moment in the battle, I would always think balance. It can't be too overloaded with, we'll call it established veterans or WCW at that time, WCW or WWE guys, me being one of them. But you can't balance it too much with all young guys. But AJ was our guy, or certainly headed in that direction. So it was always the balance of everything. But knowing that we have a guy like Hardy, it was, of course AJ's got to be in the ring with him. Okay, a lot of pressure on him. And is that going to be the biggest box office attraction? But long term, it's one of those things that I look back on now, in that methodically, we really built AJ. We over the years, we really built him from 2002 to 2008 and 9. It was just a consistent build.
And what was interesting too is, it's written in the Observer, you were consistently saying to Jeff, you and AJ will tear the house down. Now remember, Jeff hasn't wrestled in 14 months with WWE. So according to the Observer, he tells you, I'm not really in the shape to do it, so don't expect that. And instead, you guys go with a 7-minute match. The idea being that fans will be excited to see Jeff Hardy, and they'll be able to put the heat on Kid Crash for screwing up this dream match when he gets to interrupt the match when it really gets going. And of course, there was a video that you guys played, which Meltzer described as really being out there, but it was designed and put together by Jeff, so it was important to him. And you guys are positioning him as just, hey, he's a free agent. Let's see what happens. Well, we know he had fun, you had fun, and you get him signed by the July 21st show. Meltzer would say Jeff Hardy was at the show and they're pushing for a title match with JArrett. He first has to get through Monty Brown, who's starting to get over as a cult deal. Hardy got a good reaction, but nothing close to his debut appearance. They're pushing him like he's a huge superstar, but now he has to deliver the goods. And Meltzer would say at least he hasn't no-showed yet, although he had everyone scared again on the 21st, as he canceled 2 flights and arrived late. The next morning, all the wrestlers take a van from the hotel to the airport to take the first flight to Orlando. Hardy wasn't there, but when they woke him up, everyone had to wait 25 minutes for him to be ready. Now they've put Frankie Kazarian in charge of Hardy to make sure he gets up on time and have Dusty Rhodes do his promos because they don't have faith in him talking, but the crowd does see him as a real star. Boy, this has got to be a stressful deal. You got one of your biggest opportunities here. You're still trying to eke out some profit. You're living and dying by what's happening every week. And now one of your newfound, prize ponies here in the showcase. Is he going to show up? Is he not? Did he make that flight? Do we need to get him another one? Is he going to wake up? Can we get him on the bus? How do you remember all this going down? And why is Frankie the guy chosen to help wrangle him a little bit?
So when I read that note, I thought to myself, no. Did Frankie volunteer to that? I don't recall. I'm not saying it's not true. I don't recall us saying, hey, Frankie, you've got this duty. It may have been, hey, I'll kind of help out. And again, Frankie's a great dude. So out of convenience, it could have been a Meltzer story. It could have been for that day. Frankie volunteered. I don't really recall that, but I do remember whether it was Bob Ryder, Jeff, why are you putting up with this? Or Dixie, or maybe other talent. And I'm going to go back to this thread that we kind of backed into unexpectedly. Hey guys, Jeff kind of moves the needle. If the worst thing we have to do is kind of help guide him here and there, it's for the greater good. It's the best for the company. What's the old saying? You got into Southern sayings. Don't throw out the baby
with the bathwater.
Yeah. So look, it's the reality of dealing with top talent, and it's always been that way. I mean, Austin, Rock, any tip-top talent, they've got baggage or uniqueness to deal with. That's what happens. It's just the reality of dealing with talent. You gotta have to figure out how to navigate that path. But Jeff at this time, and certainly not till years later, because I didn't address Mahone, but I don't want to say he was not an issue, but it was nothing to the point of, okay, we can't deal with him. He's got to go. It just, that wasn't there. It was maybe a little late here and there. And he lives about 90 minutes from the airport at his home, and, a 6 a.m. flight. And I'm like, Bob, he ain't going to make that first flight out. Well, our company policy is book them their first flight out of, their home, because we were bringing them in on Wednesday mornings again to save a hotel on Tuesday nights. Was that the best decision? Hindsight 2020. But when you're dealing with a more than finite budget, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, we learned that the hard way at StarCast 1. You book them to bring them in the day before, because if there is a delay, boy, it will happen.
Yep.
If you're on that first flight out, it's usually on time. After that, well, shit rolls downhill. If those delays roll in, it just is what it is. I learned that in 2018, and now everybody comes in the day before. So let's talk about it. It was hyped as the biggest single match in TNA history. It's going to be the first ever JArrett versus Jeff Hardy match. And it's called A Date with Fate. And I guess this was actually even bigger than your Raven and Sting match. But Meltzer would say that, this is a match that everybody's kind of worried about, because Jeff has not been wrestling on a consistent basis. So it's written in the Observer. JArrett laid it out shorter than most NWA title matches and only went 11 minutes and 15 seconds. And he booked much of it as brawling outside of the ring, as well as putting a lot of focus on the Dusty Rhodes and Vince Russo angle where both of those guys were positioned outside of the ring, because allegedly you recognized Jeff Hardy's limitations. You win with a guitar shot while Dusty and Russo are arguing outside, distracting Hardy. That's directly from the Observer. Are you trying to just leave it open-ended and doing storytelling, or are you concerned with, hey, man, I don't want him to gas out. We want people to get the Jeff Hardy experience, but if we can't give them that, let's just lean on story right now.
Yeah, bingo. I mean, do what we think is the best for long-term business.
Yes.
Get the match, but equal as important, progress the story. Because again, this is one of those booking lessons that until you've kind of experienced it, observed it, then experienced it, and then kind of been in the seat, it's hard to understand. But when you hear the old saying, hey, this dude is already over, you don't have to do anything else to get him over. He's over. That was Jeff. It's not like a 30-minute match was going to get him more over. It's not like a loss was going to get him over. It's not like a win was going to get him over. How do we progress the story? That makes sense.
It does make sense. And you guys did progress the story. You wind up building towards a ladder match at the very first Victory Road pay-per-view.
Okay.
It's November 7th, 2004. According to the Observer, it was a pretty rough road to get there. The plan was Jarrett versus Hardy and not Monty Brown, as was originally planned, with the idea Hardy's name means more to the mainstream for November 7th. Of course, Hardy was doing everything possible to make sure it didn't happen. This is all directly from Dave Meltzer. After the decision was made to go with Hardy, he not only no-showed the September 28th Impact taping where he was supposed to have a squash match over David Young, he also never even called in before the show or give them any sort of explanation. They still pushed him for the show the next week, even though they hadn't heard from him. He did come on October 5th and pinned Abyss, while Brown pinned Raven in the semifinals of the tournament. So it appears they're going with the plan. But Hardy had told people that he left a miserable company to come to another miserable company. He was excited at one point about being here, but quickly realized the whole promotion was just a vehicle for Jarrett and was quickly losing interest. It was a risk pushing him to begin with. Some people in wrestling just don't get that there was a very good reason he was let go by WWE. And as we've written before, unless he goes for help himself, nothing is going to change by simply pretending to see and hear no evil, although that is the common theme in wrestling nowadays. So the pay-per-view main event is Jarrett versus Hardy. And they went with the original plan. Hardy asked for a ladder match. We'll stop it right there before we talk about the match. Well, I guess we should mention the final on October 12th in Orlando. We'll see a ref bump. Hardy hits a swanton. There's no ref. Abyss hits Hardy with a black hole slam. Raven hits Brown with a chair and a DDT. That allows Hardy to win. And I'm curious what you remember of this sort of hokey pokey moment here, where is he happy? Is he coming? Do we have him? Do we not? What do you remember?
Well, issues, and I'm trying to think. Well, first note is that, on online chatter, and I try to rack my brain. I'd love to get the old crew back in a room and try to see what we could recall. But I think you casually mentioned there, or Meltzer Keller did, or whatever it was, that it was going to be Monty's slot. And you kind of think back, of course, Jeff Hardy is going to sell many more pay-per-view buys. He had, the at this
women
point,
and children and all that.
Yeah. But the what if Monty had been in that, because we were headed down that road with Monty, but it was the obvious choice with Jeff, that crazy 12-foot ladder when he wanted a real big ladder. But no, there were issues. I mean, Jeff was battling his demons. I didn't call it that then. He didn't call it that then. But, there was, again, we were doing, at this point, I think and I'm not exactly sure which dates, but I think we had officially left the Impact, the Asylum in Nashville, and we were just doing Orlando. But, Jeff was having a tough time. I don't believe for a minute that was his mindset, that he didn't want to be there. Specifically TNA, he didn't want to be a lot of places. He just was battling his demons. And Jeff has never been a guy who could care less about winning or losing. That's another thing about his philosophy. He always knew how to get himself over, regardless of the finish, regardless of the high spots. Jeff's Jeff. And that's another thing that is you hear old timers through the years. I think I remember Dick Murdoch saying something to the effect, Wahoo McDaniel on a car ride. Guys that know how to get over, you're not going to deny them, period. We're using that theme a lot, get over. Jeff was one of those guys. He knew how to get over and stay over. So finishes, matches, high spots did not affect whether he wanted to be there or not. The outside forces that he was dealing with, that affected him, obviously pretty bad.
At this point, you're still partying, enjoying life.
You hear that?
Yeah, that only happens on your connection, just so you know.
What the hell is
I don't know. It doesn't happen on any other show we've ever done, but on your show, about once a week, the ghosts of Goodlettsville want to come on down and hang
with
out.
all my high-speed, fast internet?
No. Yeah, I mean, it was even there on the regular ass internet, but it's fine. I mean, that's Jeff trying to tap in and hear that was old Nero right there.
There it is.
Willow the Wisp or whatever.
So what's your question? Because I can
see you're partying back then.
Oh yeah.
At that point, do you believe that Jeff is involved with both drugs and alcohol, or did you just say, "Oh man, he likes to have a beer every now and again, no big deal"? Was that your attitude at the time?
You know what? And see, this is where that disease can really isolate you, and obviously, clear thinking is not in anybody battling that, but because I was a guy at this time, I partied after
the matches
that, and it, when I finally went to bed or whatever it may be, when I woke up, it was run hard, but from a work point of view until the show's over again. I didn't really give it a lot of headspace thinking, what is he using or not using or drinking or not drinking? It was, man, his partying's got out of hand.
Well, I just know sometimes there's certain things that people do that make them reclusive. And so they kind of withdraw.
Yeah.
And then there's other things, like I don't mind saying, I'm a social drinker. I don't ever sit here at the house and drink by myself. Like that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But like if I'm going to go out with my buddies and we're going to have, a late liquid lunch on a Saturday and watch some football games, yeah, I'm probably going to have some alcohol, but I'm not going to do that when I'm at home. So I don't sort of recluse up with my indulging and imbibing, if you will. It becomes a social function. And I didn't know, like, because I've been around enough to know that after the shows, sometimes there is a cooler with beer and guys are hanging out and, hey, let's go to the hotel bar. Or, hey, I know there's a party over here or whatever. But I know there's other guys who say, no, I kind of do my own thing. I'm out of here.
Yeah. And look, the disease of addiction and alcoholism is not cookie cutter by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
But I would say the overwhelming majority in the dark days, it's all isolate, using, drinking.
I got you.
Every one of us. And once it gets really chronic,
tip the canoe. I got you.
There you go. You isolate. It's what happens. I'm like you, Conrad. I was social until I wasn't.
I got you. Hey, so let's talk about the finish here. We got lots of interference here. We got Abyss, we got Raven. There's lots of people doing lots of stuff here.
Now,
are you doing?
When is this? What's today?
This is the final to get towards the pay-per-view.
Not the pay-per-view yet. Okay.
Him and Monty. I'm wondering, did you do the Schmoz finish with all this interference as a cover in case he no-showed and you needed it?
I'd say that was definitely a factor, but I think storytelling was equally that. Where are we going after this? Again, we had dove into, here we go. We're going to do TV every week and do the monthly pay-per-views. And as I've stated multiple times, if there's one thing My World podcast has really opened the eyes to is, the business was red hot when Eric well, I'm not sure his business. Yeah, it was. It was definitely on the upswing when he decided to go monthly. It's just a different model, and all the, us doing monthly pay-per-views and weekly television. That churned up so much storytelling and so much talent, because we were always thinking, and that's why I'm circling back to this answer. Even the build to our first monthly pay-per-view, we were having to overlayer it with stories, so we had somewhere to go out of it.
I want to mention, I only bring that up because I think you could be critical of the booking and saying, hey, if he's really going to be our top guy, why wouldn't we just have him win clean?
Yeah.
But I understand, well, dude, he missed the show 2 weeks ago. Are you sure you want to do that? We've got more canceled airline tickets on this guy than we cared to admit.
Mm-hmm.
We need a backup in case he no shows. So if we quote unquote screw Monty, we could do a storyline where Monty gets a shot and we'll figure out the Jeff thing later. I get that. But it is interesting to think in hindsight, you don't recall if that was exactly it, but certainly somebody had to suggest, well, hypothetically,
yes,
CYA here.
For sure.
Eventually you guys make up though. Of course, Hardy wins the deal. As it turns out, he never did return a call after no showing on September 27th. And after not hearing from Jeff, they called Matt Hardy, who's home rehabbing his knee. This, of course, is all word for word from the Observer from Dave Meltzer. Matt was the intermediary and apologized for his brothers not calling. They finally got a hold of Jeff, who gave an excuse that was said to be beyond lame, but they accepted it because it's see no evil, hear no evil here. As it turned out, the Orlando crowd turned bad against Hardy in the match with Abyss, which wasn't very good. And the idea that you guys have to get a hold of Matt is probably less than ideal, but eventually you do get the match in the ring. And wouldn't you know it, we should probably do a whole show on this show eventually, Victory Road 2004.
We will.
That big old ladder match you talked about, it happened. And you guys go 18 minutes and 37 seconds. And since this is a vehicle just to promote you, and that's it, that's the only reason that TNA even exists. We've well established that.
That down.
The Observer, the Torch, they all said it, so it must be true. You keep the NWA title because, of course, you do. It's your belt. You paid for it. Why would you give it to somebody else? Meltzer would say the body of the match was much better than expected, but the match and really the end of the show were such a downer of what had been a good show up to that point. Even though they had billed Kevin Nash in Hardy's corner and Scott Hall in Jarrett's corner, neither came out. Hall had done a promo earlier saying Nash wasn't there, and the announcers were selling it as they hadn't seen him in a way you knew he wasn't coming at the end. Hardy, who looked the best he has in years, gave Jarrett a swanton off the ladder. Hall came out at this point to save Jarrett, and people were cheering Hall like crazy. Because the crowd was almost all out-of-towners, it was very different than the usual TV taping crowd, and Hardy was not being booed. Fans were cheering both men. Hardy does a ladder teeter-totter spot where Jarrett gets the ladder to the face. Hardy does a running whisper in the wind over the top rope onto both Jarrett and Hall. Both guys are taking crazy bumps off the ladder and land on Hall. The match was really cool at this point, and then it fell apart. Twice. Once on the ladder, once on the apron. Hardy went to do the dangerous high sunset flip powerbomb move, and since Jarrett was calling the match, it was really weird when both times he blocked taking the move when Hardy was going with it like he was doing it. It looked like Jarrett pussed out twice, but it was confusing because if you don't want to take it, more power to you, but don't call it and change your mind. Fans booed both spots heavily like they could when they were bad misses. Jarrett hit Hardy with a chair and went for a guitar. Nash came out holding two guitars. Nash walked out, and it was one of those deals where time stood still, where they had to wait for him because he was taking his sweet time. He's aged a lot as well and looks like a real tall old man. He was carrying two guitars and treated it all like comedy. He gave one to Hall, and all three guitar shot at Hardy, leading to Jarrett climbing up and getting the belt for the win. Jeff, my God, we could do a whole episode on this match by itself. First of all, I just love the way that old set in Orlando looked. Just seeing photos of it again made me happy. That era of TNA is my favorite. I know that a lot of people say, I saw Nick Aldis say the other day, he felt like the peak of TNA was like 08, 09. My peak fandom was probably like 02 to 05. I really enjoyed it. But I got to ask you here about, well, a lot. Number one, we should just talk about Kevin Nash, quote unquote, treating it like comedy. Did you have an issue with him not dyeing his hair? Were you cool with, the new look of Kevin Nash? What about him taking his quote unquote sweet time, as it said in the Observer? Is that overstated, or was time standing still for you in the ring? And then the idea that Dave says, in his opinion, Kevin Nash was treating this as comedy. We know Kevin is super funny, super dry, super entertaining, super witty. Did this need him to be a little more serious, or is it much ado about nothing in the Observer?
Well, I thought you were going to comment on Meltzer saying that I was in a ladder match and taking crazy bumps, but then blocked.
Wait, hang on. That's the main event. We're going to talk about that second, because it was being written in the Observer that you called the spot.
Yes. Okay.
So that we'll get to there in a minute.
Okay. Nash, I think your first question was hair color.
Yeah.
I've always kind of leaned into stay with the look when you became the most famous, at least, but you got to be comfortable in your own skin. So I deferred to Kevin. If I would have had my druthers, I would have said, yes, get it don't go all gray. But again, a guy who's 6'11", athletic, who's in arguably the most famous faction of all time, does it really hurt as if he has gray hair? The other thing is Jeff, Kevin, and Scott were going into this Kings of Wrestling that had obviously comedy kind of that motif. So I knew where Kevin was coming from. I would have to go back and watch the tape and see if he was, look, it's subjective. Did he take too long or not? Again, me and Hardy had been in a 15, 20-minute match. So it's not like we couldn't do things to sell and get the thing shot right, TV-wise, and build to the spot, and however it may be. So I think that's all subjective. But hair color, I answered that. I think you had 3 questions. Hair color.
Taking it seriously. Was he taking his sweet time getting down there?
Yeah, taking it. My gut tells me he was taking his sweet time, but that's not always necessarily a bad thing.
No, I mean, it's the big reveal. This is the big swerve. He's supposed to.
Yes, exactly.
Now, the thing that tickled me most about this is when he talks about you called the match, you called the spot, and then you pussed out and didn't do it twice. Jeff reading that out loud.
30 years.
Say again.
Dave's been on me for 30 years. He knocked the Rodman segment. He knocked me blocking it, pussing. Early in my career, he used to give false reports. Anyway, I'm kidding.
It just tickles me. Well, he called the spot. Were you in the ring? How do you know who called the spot? How do you know what the plan was? How do you know he pussed out?
Yeah.
Like, listen, I love me some Dave Meltzer. I am a paying subscriber of the Observer and have been for well over 25 years. I just love it. I can't get enough of it. And I know some of you are going to say, well, you should poke holes in it. No, I use it as a reference point because he covered this stuff in greater detail than most anybody. I mean, certainly Mike Johnson over at PW Insider and before that One Wrestling was doing the Lord's work. But I'm saying he wasn't in the 80s. He wasn't in the early 90s. So all we really have, besides, the aftermags, if you will, and half of that stuff was, whatever. This is, it's the torch in the Observer. But goodness gracious, if there is anyone who reports on wrestling now, please don't ever write that so-and-so pussed out. What? Who says that?
Oh, Uncle Dave. You know what? I'd like to watch it back because my gut tells me we had the spots laid out and Jeff wanted to do it too soon, or I got my wires crossed, and that's one of us. One was zigging, the other was zagging, and it's probably didn't look real pretty, but it ain't the first time. And let me ask you, just here's kind of the thing that is, well, I'll let you put it in a bow, but isn't the objectivity of a contest to win. So should I just say, hey, it's all scripted, Jeff. Come here and powerbomb me off this ladder. You're supposed to do that because the spot, or am I supposed to try to block it? I don't know. So again, I don't have full context of looking at it, but old Dave saying, however you said it, but isn't that the objectivity of it's supposed to look like a contest and not everything super smooth? I don't know.
Yes.
That's where you kind of get into. Now, are we scripted or are we real or are we?
It's not supposed to look flawless. It's not. It is supposed to be a battle. But the thing that tickled me
is who's calling the spots.
How does he know that?
Well, he knows. He's got his sources.
Marcus, let's get a tight one shot of Jeff. Jeff, let's pretend hypothetically,
okay,
that there was a ladder spot that was called by Jeff, and you weren't comfortable with it. I want you to go back in your mind to about 14 months ago, backstage in Municipal Auditorium, when it was suggested by a 74-year-old man, not once, but twice, that you do a Canadian destroyer, that you take a Canadian destroyer. And now we're going to say, so Jeff, I'm going to be Jeff Hardy now. So double, here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to get on top of that 12-foot ladder, and then I'm going to do like a flip over high sunset power bomb, and then power bomb you on another ladder.
Can you say that way? Walk me through that spot again, because I just want to.
So, we got a 12-foot ladder out there, double, and I'm going to climb all the way to the top of it on one side, and I'm going to have you climb all the way to the top of it on the other side, but I'm going to have another ladder underneath us.
I got you.
And then I'm going to flip over the top of the ladder, flip over you like a really high-risk sunset flip power bomb.
Okay.
And then I'm going to power bomb straight out of Hendersonville you right through that second ladder. That right there is your Danny DeVito gif. It will never get old. I told that to a friend of ours who was in that room that day the other day, and they howled with laughter for several minutes because they knew exactly what Danny DeVito reference I had. Listen, it's a big deal. You guys have not only secured Jeff Hardy, but now you've got Scott Hall and Kevin Nash here. And Kevin Nash is then, according to Dave Meltzer, going to do a terrible promo about how he's making tons of money again and that Jeff Hardy is envious of him because they were in the urinals next to each other earlier today.
Okay.
They're beating up Hardy. Styles come in to make the save. They sell a little bit for him. Then they destroy him. And next, all three members of the 3 Live crew come out. They sell for just a minute, and then they laid them out. Quote, this was just plain dumb booking because it hurts your guys and you don't need the spot. But it made it seem like WCW since Nash and Hall were totally clowning at this point, and they're being attacked by so many people and easily beating them up like they're doing nothing. The heels continued their 3-on-5 backward psychology beatdown until Randy Savage showed up. And they went off the air. 2 3/4 stars. Boys and Girls Victory Road 2004. I can't wait to talk about it. Remember this moment. We will talk about it. I could do another 2 hours just on Randy Savage. This is going to be his swan song in wrestling for all intents and purposes. I was so excited to see you and Jeff in a ladder match. Jeff, the other Jeff, had said so many iconic ladder matches. We know you pussed out. I read it in the Observer. And you didn't do it once. You did it twice. But you got Scott Hall, and you got Kevin Nash, and you got Randy Savage. And I said to myself, this feels fresh.
Oh, boy.
Kickstart a fresh fall routine with HelloFresh. HelloFresh will handle all the planning and shopping to deliver you everything you need to cook up a tasty meal right at home. You see, they do all the hard part, and you get to take the credit. And when it comes to options, listen, baby, honestly, more is more. That's why HelloFresh's menu includes 40 recipes and over 100 add-on items to choose from every week. A busy fall schedule doesn't always leave you with time to spare, and HelloFresh doesn't need you to spend all evening in the kitchen to whip up a wholesome meal. Check out their quick and easy recipes and 15-minute meals. You can get a tasty dinner on the table in less time than it takes for takeout or delivery. And by the way, you'll spend less time planning and shopping and cooking and more time, well, with them. They've even got time-saving breakfast options and family dinners. How about kid-approved lunches and snacks? HelloFresh has something for everybody, and I mean it. Whether you're vegan, man, they got a veggie option for you. Maybe you need a family-friendly option. Maybe you want a fit and wholesome option. Whatever you're looking for, there's over 40 different options every week. They take all the stress out. They deliver you fresh ingredients. How fresh? Well, from the farm to your door in less than 7 days. That's how fresh. And it's exactly what you need. And I got to admit, when I saw the names of some of these recipes, I was intimidated. And I said to myself, I can't cook that. Dude, the instructions are so easy. They got pictures. You do this, then you do that, then you do... Holy shit, this is awesome. That was my experience with HelloFresh. You're going to love it too. And let me tell you this, my favorite part is I don't have the stress of getting the wrong thing. We've all gotten this call from our wife before, right? Honey, can you stop by the grocery store and get me some blank? Man, shit, I don't know what she's even talking about, but I don't want to get the wrong thing, so I'm going to get 3 of them. Well, now I'm wasting money in an effort to not get my big ass in trouble when I get home. Don't do that. They send you exactly what you need. It's pre-portioned. It's all the ingredients you need. You don't have to forget anything. You don't have to go shopping for anything. You're all set, ready to roll. It makes it a breeze. And boys, it pays bonus points if you cook with your wife. I'm just telling you. I don't know what you're getting for supper, but I know what you're getting for dessert if you're picking up what I'm putting down. HelloFresh tastes great. It's good for you. It's cheaper. It's faster. I mean, it's just something you're going to enjoy doing with the family. Seriously, go right now to HelloFresh.com/50MyWorld. Use the code 50MyWorld. You'll get 50% off. Plus 15% off for the next 2 months. That's HelloFresh.com/50MyWorld. And use the code 50MyWorld for 50% off. Plus 15% off for the next 2 months. It's HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. So listen, man, I know we got to talk about Randy Savage at some point in a long form, but when you think about all your ladder matches and big moments in TNA, I mean, I'm sure as a ladder match, this is a highlight because it's a big old ladder and it's on pay-per-view and it's your company and it's a big deal and it's for the world title and it's the main event and it's loaded with star power. But on the other hand, it's got to be a little bittersweet because, yeah, it feels like a big deal, but maybe it didn't go exactly as we imagined. Fair to say?
Yes. When I think back on, so we're heading into Fox. I'm trying to do the best I can on full context of this is prior to Spike.
Yeah, this is Fox Sports Network.
Okay. So I'm saying all that to say we were not profitable at this point.
Yeah.
And we took a big capital investment. And look, everything's relative. I get that. But for our bandwidth, moving from Nashville to Orlando to do a TV show and go into monthly pay-per-views, the investment that was coming from the Carter family in Dallas, it just went up, period. And yeah, we had international money that really began to, that you could see quite a bit of blue sky there. I think Marvel had already started interest, the action figures, so our licensing program was beginning to come along. But Conrad, the pressure of everything that goes with this, not even bringing into my personal life. So yeah, I just kind of think through end of 05, end of 06, till we got that Spike deal, how much pressure was on all of us, really, Dixie included, because the investment was coming in. We've got to get an ROI here. That's real pressure in life. A match that high spots may or may not have gone exactly right. Kevin Nash may or may not have got to the ring as quick as we had liked. Randy Savage may or may not have had his best outing, and God rest his soul, that was his last one. But thank God for WrestleQuest, and he is living gloriously in our minds today via WrestleQuest. But no, Conrad, lots of pressure. But yes, the mechanics of the main event, I'm not going to go down and say, oh, that's one of my top 5, top 10 matches. Not at all. But if you really look at it, has Jeff's mechanics or mine always been even remotely our calling card? No, they haven't.
And Randy Savage, by the way, for everybody who's maybe not aware, I know that in your opinion, Jerry Lawler is the greatest wrestler of all time because of what you saw up close and the way he mastered his craft and how he drew money and his approach to the business. But as far as a guy his size having mainstream national success as a good wrestler and a good promo and a good character and a larger than life persona on a national platform, is it fair to say that Randy Savage is your 1B to Lawler's 1A?
Oh, without question. Taking a step back and looking at Macho Man's entire career.
Yeah.
It's quite a few years in it. He's a trendsetter. You just kind of take him out of the Hulk Hogan run. I mean, just think of the importance he played in Hogan's run. If you ask me, the personality, because Hogan had the monster heel after the monster heel after the monster heel. That was kind of the bread and butter. But when you did the Mega Powers and Savage and just the dynamic of that, and then Randy, personal family favorite, but business wise, the flamboyancy. There's nothing Randy couldn't do, heel or babyface. Obviously, he was an announcer as well, but nothing he couldn't do. I can't say enough good things about the professional wrestler / sports entertainer Randy was. He had really no peers in how he attacked the business. Boy, getting me to reflect on Randy, but yeah, he's there. He's up there without question.
I can't wait for us to talk about him and how that deal came together. Of course, today's topic is Jeff Hardy, so we'll try to stay on topic.
Hey,
go ahead.
Real quick, because we like to have fun on this. Marcus, will you put up that picture of Savage one more time? Connie, have you ever seen a black cowboy hat, a black trench coat, and a black muscle shirt?
I have, usually on Wednesday nights.
Okay, let's move on. This is the first time that's ever. Literally, I just went, "Oh, wait! Look at that outfit,
buddy." And you got your Miss Elizabeth out there.
Oh my God! Well, no.
Yeah, hypothetically, if Jay pats her on the butt one time, you guys are going to have a blood feud. You know what I mean? Listen, there's a steel cage rematch with you and Jeff Hardy on the Best Damn Wrestling event. Period. I know that might not make a lot of sense, but let me just catch you up. Here in America on Fox Sports Net, we had a show that was the #1 show on Fox Sports for a long time called the Best Damn Sports Show, period. And it was hosted by Chris Rose, and they had John Sally and some other rotating guests like John Kruk. It was a great show, maybe ahead of its time. You see shows like that 24/7 now on all the different ESPNs. But this was maybe one of the first ones with that sort of
for sure
living room style set and approach and dialogue and conversation.
Is it Tom Arnold?
Yeah, Tom Arnold was there. Yeah, big part of it.
Well, and that to me always made okay. So it's not just all a talking head and former jocks.
Trying to do some comedy in there too.
I thought it broke the mold. That Fox Sports, when you kind of go back and really look at the history of it, they've broke the mold and they do it better than anybody.
So they ran a special for you guys. Now, this is important because, and I think this gets lost in history. You know, these days people are saying, "Oh, AEW Collision is just a terrible time slot. It's Saturday night during prime time. People aren't going to be doing that. They have a life. They've got things to do." Well, how's a weekday in the afternoon? Say around, I don't know, 3:30? That's what TNA had here, and they were damn happy to have it. I'll have you know. Tell Jeff Jarrett back then, you want to get off of Fox Sports Net on a weekday afternoon and get prime time live on TBS, he'd have lined them up, boy. He'd have lined them up. I'm saying all that to say, when you do get a special for TNA on Fox Sports Network, and it's called Best Damn Wrestling Event, period, that's a cool deal. So the second show main event is Jeff Hardy versus Jeff Jarrett in a cage match. So we've seen him in a ladder match, but now we're going to see him in a cage match. Hardy does a swanton off the top of the cage. Is that enough to beat Jeff Jarrett? Well, what do you think?
Hell no.
This whole promotion is a vehicle for him to get himself over. So what he does is he takes Jeff Hardy's own little necklace, bink, and that's enough. Down goes Jeff Hardy, domes him with his own necklace. Jeff Jarrett, by God, as if you had any doubt, he wins. And that's not the story. The swanton off the cage should have been enough, but that's not it. The crowd went into business for themselves, is the phrase they like to use in wrestling. They were not with the plan here, man. They are all over Jeff Hardy. They're booing him bad to the point where you have to use crowd sweetener just to drown it out. This is all according to the Observer. And what I can't get my head around is, why are they so anti-Jeff Hardy? Is it because he's a quote-unquote WWE guy and they want the homegrowns? Or what's going on with this crowd, dude? Everybody loves Jeff Hardy. How do they not?
Wow. Look, I got to go back in the that's a good research question for our research team. We need to ask some firsthand account of folks in the creative room, maybe folks in the production house. I thought you were going to talk about the Best Damn Sports Show. I just thought it was cool as we were, because you pointed out to me the most important aspect of it all is that we're a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Tony Khan watched this show, but it's funny how a lot of wrestling fans found it on Friday afternoons on regional sports networks. But people were, even us going into it, we're like, okay, can we establish some ratings? Because we know we eventually want to get paid for our product. And the only way we're going to get paid for it is if we can establish ratings. And they assured us, yes, we'll be able to measure ratings. And we started popping numbers on Fridays. But before our year was up or whatever, they came and, we would love to do a special. It was a really, really, really big deal because that was the show on that network. Yes, they had all kinds of, if you're in Atlanta, you got to watch the Braves. And if you're, because it's, okay, let me back up even further. People who don't really, this generation understand. Fox Sports at this time was compiled of, gosh, I'm always miss this up, 12, 18, 14, whatever it was, regional sports networks.
Yeah.
If you're in each region, you carried the local or regional, there was Ohio, there was Midwest, there was Texas,
we had Fox Sports South, you and I did.
Yeah, which was Braves and Grizzlies basketball. But I mean, it just kind of the region. So for us to clear for us to clear 1 hour nationwide, how'd you end up on Fridays? Well, you don't really have baseball games on Friday afternoons. You got them on Friday evenings. You don't really have basketball. That was the only way that they could say we can clear you for 52 weeks on Friday afternoons. Because people are like, how did y'all end up with that time slot? Our kind of biggest, I can't say biggest or only, but what is, because wrestling is consistency. I tell folks to this day, I had a conversation 3 months ago with a guy in India. I'm like, consistency. This is not, it's just not your ordinary average kind of program. It's consistency that you build characters and it just happens over time. So that's how we ended up on Friday. But once we got in there and we got to kind of pop some numbers, they came and said, hey, how can we do Best Damn Wrestling Show or a special? We were super fired up for the opportunity because it was a piece of validation from a network that, hey, you guys are doing okay or better than okay. And so we want to do a special out of this. It was big. Back to your question about Hardy. Conrad, I can't think for the life of me, but I saw recently on our, can't even say Twitter, on X, if you will, the night Hogan debuted, and I think he was burying folks, and they turned their back on him. So the TNA faithful in Orlando were very, very faithful, and they loved their own. They didn't love me, but that's why I'm trying to think. Why were they booing Jeff? Obviously it's for that. I can't think of any other reason other than they didn't like the WWE folks in their house.
It's interesting. That's not the end of the show. We should mention AJ Styles comes off the top of the cage, hits you with a cross body, and then we see Tom Arnold brawling with Puppet. That's a real thing. But it's a big opportunity, and it's interesting to think about, what all's happened here so quickly, because we're not done. We've still got one more match. It's Turning Point 2004. This is Randy Savage's swan song, if you will. It's Jeff Hardy, AJ Styles, and the Macho Man Randy Savage taking on Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Jeff Jarrett. You guys go 17 minutes and 52 seconds. I'm sure we're going to talk about it a ton at a later date. It makes more sense for us to table this. The conversation is really about Jeff Hardy. But Jeff Hardy is in the match here, and there's a lot of stuff going on here. I mean, Savage is wrestling his last match, and he's in a 6-man, and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash are coming out dressed like Elvis. And you're trying to find, think about that 6-man. I don't think there's a lot of wrestling fans who would think this match ever happened.
No.
Like Jeff Hardy teamed with AJ Styles and the Macho Man. What?
Yep.
But it did happen. And I was fortunate enough to be watching. I was so happy to see the Macho Man. Jeff Hardy's just kind of there. They're also doing an angle involved that we'll talk about another time, where they beat up Savage, throw him in a car, and he's kidnapped. And then the Flying Elvis's theme music plays, and here they come. And it's an interesting time. We'll table all of that, but you and Jeff Hardy have a handful of tag matches on Impact in 2005, but Hardy gets suspended more than once for no showing events, and ultimately gets released by TNA in 2006. And believe it or not, he wound up going back to the WWE in August of the same year. Do you think, we've never talked about this, I'm asking you on air, we can clip it out if you don't feel comfortable answering. Do you think he intentionally no-showed trying to get his release so he could go back to WWE?
No. And I say that with, gosh, and I know it's repetitive, but I think it's truly reality. The disease of addiction affects the brain that makes decisions. And when you're in active addiction, you don't make the best of decisions. So I don't think he woke up and came up with a plan and said, if I no-show those folks, my buddy Jeff down there, that is probably the perfect chess move I should do so I could go back to the WWE. I just don't think that's how it operates. I think circumstance and fate and everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to happen, fortunately or unfortunately.
Well, we know that he is going to get another shot with WWE. He reaches the pinnacle. He's no longer just in the Intercontinental or the tag team conversation. He becomes the WWE and world champion several times between 2008 and 2009. And he leaves when his contract expires in September of 2009. But wouldn't you know it, just like he went back to WWE, he comes back to TNA. It's the first live Monday Impact, January 4th, 2010. We've talked about this before in the archives, available now. But one thing we didn't touch on a lot was, what was your relationship like with Jeff at this point? When he's back in the company, we'll call it 13 years ago in 2010. You mentioned at the top of the show that you guys have done family vacations together. Are y'all tight here in 2010 or not quite yet?
It was always, I don't say off and on, but sometimes closer than others. Not closer, sometimes more in contact with one another. We could go a couple of months and not a phone conversation. Doesn't really mean we weren't on the same level of friendship, if that makes sense. So
no, it does.
Yeah. He went off and was doing his thing at the WWE, and I was doing my thing at TNA.
We know eventually he's going to team with you as part of Team Hogan. You guys are going to defeat Team Flair at Lockdown 2010 at Bound for Glory. Unbelievably, Hardy's going to turn heel with Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff, and with their help, defeat Angle and Anderson to win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship for the first time. They're then joined by Jeff Jarrett and Abyss, revealing the group that Abyss had been referring to as they
10,
for several
10,
months.
10, 10, 10.
We're going to talk about that a lot more some other time, but were you in favor of turning Jeff Hardy heel? Like you mentioned earlier, when you had a friend sort of scout a live event, that they had a handful of WWE items and double that in just Jeff Hardy items. SKUs is what we call them, different merch items. But the baby faces sell the merch, not the heel. So is this a financial risk to turn a guy who has historically been a needle mover for merch into a bad guy? Or is the juice worth the squeeze because of the creative?
I'm not going to say. I could probably think of, well, yeah, I just thought of one. But when Hulk came in, to his defense, he came in with all the power. If he kept things exactly the way they were, I know from his, I would assume from his brain space, he would go, well, they don't need me here. They don't need this or that. So I'm going to make a bunch of changes. And Dixie encouraged it. From the beginning, I always thought Hogan's best role would be an ambassador out validating what we were already doing. We were having success. We were profitable, but we needed a louder megaphone, a louder spokesman, a more well-known one. But, you know, Hulk came in. What made the brand different? One of the things was six-sided ring, get rid of that. You know, he dogged me on some promos who, for lack of a better word, as we've joked in this podcast, in a lot of ways, I was one of the faces from, not a talent, from a business perspective of the brand. Well, Jeff Hardy is someone that we brought on board. Obviously, WWE massive lineage, but and we haven't really even got into it. And God rest his soul, Don West. He could talk for days, and he would, you know, when we would strategize back at the office and going out on live events, and the way Don would meticulously kind of get into the DNA of the strategy of how we were going to sell things, you know, Hardy was always at the tip top. You know, Kurt wouldn't sell a lot of T-shirts and merchandise, but everybody would love to have a picture with Kurt Angle in the ring. Me, I'm going to sell 20, 25, 30 guitars at a high level. So sell some meet and greets. And I'm, you know, maybe selling the 8x10s in the program, and I'm kind of the face of the brand and all this. Don had Jeff plugged in everywhere in that merch, down to his wristbands and trinkets. He would say, all right, we got 3 or 4 trinkets of Jeff Hardy. We got 3 or 4 SKUs of T-shirts. We got to create this mega kind of grand thing of, hey, can we do a limited number of photo ops with Jeff during intermission, and that'll help us sell T-shirts, but we can only do 30. I mean, Don was amazing on his strategy to monetize things. There was not even a close second that Jeff was our merch mover. Period. It's even silly. I mean, he, you know, I could go on and on about that. You know, I was recently telling a story about when I looked at the SKUs when the Fiend was red hot. It was the Fiend and others as far as selling merch of the active roster. I'm sure Cena is 10-1 right now selling merch, but Jeff was that needle mover. And when they came in, I understood that Hogan and Eric wanted to do things different, because in a lot of ways that may validate their high salaries and paychecks and all that. But creatively, I thought, okay, you're going to make Jeff Hardy, I don't even want to call him a heel. Let's call him an antagonist. What will he do to antagonize his protagonist? What's Jeff going to do to make people either hate him or resent him or angry or whatever it is? That's just not in Jeff's character. And I'm not saying real life. I'm talking about his persona. So Conrad, I thought it was, from a business perspective, a horrible decision. But at that point, I was on the outside looking in. And from a creative perspective, I ran the play to the best of my ability. I was worried about live events and international. But creatively, I went right along with it.
Well, we know that there's going to be an ugly spot in Jeff's run. We've talked about this a little bit here and there. I know Eric and I have beat it up in great detail. I'm sure we'll do a watch along at some point. Victory Road 2011. Unfortunately, he's in no condition to perform in his main event against Sting. Bischoff calls an audible. We know what happens. Hardy gets suspended. He's gone until August. Man, this is when, if those quote unquote demons, as we like to say in wrestling, were not apparent to everyone, they were that day. What do you remember about that evening and the fallout from that event?
You know what? I hadn't done this a while. I don't know what my role was on the show. You may be able to Google it, but I do remember. Here's what I remember. Me and Karen had already left because we used to stay at the Doubletree, literally right across the street from Orlando. And whatever our role was creatively on the show, we had already left, and I had gotten up into the room. Believe this, shocker, Conrad, I'd already opened a beer, but I got the call, first a text, then a call. Anyway, Russo, get over here now. And by the time I got over there, I'd already seen kind of the aftermath. And, you know, mentally, I jumped to some conclusions. Now I've heard a couple of different versions of the situation, but I thought to myself, how the hell did y'all let him go through the curtain? Was my thought. But, you know, very unfortunate. I felt bad really for everyone involved. I mean, and that includes Hulk, Eric, Dixie, obviously Jeff, the roster, the fans. Just it's one of those things that it's nothing good came out of that as far as from a show perspective. Personally, it's a part of Jeff's story and a part of his journey. Unless you have some deep, deep valleys, it's impossible to have mountaintops. And this was a really, really, really bad valley.
You weren't on the show that night. I'm sure you were there working the event, but you didn't appear on camera as far as doing matches or anything like that.
Yeah.
We've talked about this, you know, ad nauseum with Eric Bischoff, who was the other man in the ring that night, and Bruce Pritchard, who was in Gorilla. That's available in the archives of those shows if you'd like to check them out. We know that Jeff Hardy winds up being suspended. He's gone until August, and he returns and then starts feuding with his former stable, Immortal, attacking Eric Bischoff on the October 6th episode of Impact. He's going to start participating in some brawls with you at Bound for Glory and on the October 20th episode of Impact. And then at Turning Point, Jeff Hardy pins you 3 times. You haven't been doing a whole lot here, but he comes out with a monster truck, or a monster mask rather, hits the twist of fate, gets the pin in 6 seconds. You attack him after the match, won an immediate rematch. He beats you a second time in 5 minutes and 41 seconds. And then it happens a third time. Everybody's here to or congratulate Hardy, including AJ Styles. And it's been said in the Observer that he was one of the guys who never wanted Jeff back after what happened at Victory Road, but he's congratulating him here on camera and endorsing him. And Meltzer says this is old school Southern wrestling, the way to get a big pop for the babyface, to have him beat the heel not once, not twice, but 3 times. But it doesn't really get any special reaction here. And I got to tell you, man, when I hear that and I read that, it's like, now what are they talking about? Don't they know that TNA was just a vehicle to get you over? But yet you got beat 3 times. What do you remember about this pay-per-view?
So I did the impersonation going into the storyline where
Yes.
I impersonated. that always got a fun reaction. Guys in the back, just I love doing that kind of stuff. Just trying to get in that complete role, and it fooled people in there. But I don't remember if it was Eric or Vince or Bruce or a combination. I'm like, what do y'all want out of this? And they're like, hey, I don't know if they said the words, we got to get Jeff up and running or whatever it may be. And that's why I just said, look, me and him can go out and have an 8-minute match, a 10-minute match, a 15-minute match. What's that really going to do at this stage? Because, Eric and them had me cleaning toilets and, the founder role that I think Mick Foley more than anybody really, really helped craft on screen. And, the main event mafia versus the new blood and all of that. By this time, they had flushed all that down the drain. The 6-sided ring gone. It was in so many ways, I was another guy on the card. And so, like, how do we what's the best way for people to go, damn, Hardy is up and running? And that was something that, as Meltzer said, I've seen it done in spot shows. I've seen it done, there's so many ways to do that particular finish. If you really want to do Conrad, maybe you've seen this or not, but on spot shows, you used to have the opening match and you would do, catch one real, like 6 seconds. That was the first fall. The second fall, you goad him back in and you go a minute and he does that. Then that's never going to happen again. Then when you go to the third fall, you bust the guy up, get him bleed, just beat the hell out of him. And if you want to use a run in or whatever it may be, but then you bring that back that night or the following week. There's a lot of ways to do that 3-fall kind of deal. But I said, let's just go all 3. I think the people were, and if you watch it back, it's subjective, but I think the people really thought that there was a screw job coming for the third one, and we didn't give them that. And I remember, ironically, Jason Hervey, he came up and he's like, damn, dude, you went all the way. And he goes, I said, well, what do you think? He said, well, I sure as hell didn't expect that. And I said, exactly. And so that was the strategy. Do as much as we possibly could. From a personal point of view, I thought it was counterproductive, distasteful, and really shameful on the powers that be that made Jeff get into a dressing room and apologize to the boys. I thought that was about as unprofessional set of circumstances. I thought it served no purpose, none. Because, okay, he's going to apologize in a group setting, like 50 people in a locker room. Why don't you let Jeff's actions show it and let him do it on a one-on-one basis? It felt like a little school kid coming in, 8 years old, and going to apologize to the class. I'm like, really? We're really going to do this? But so that was my personal, but professionally, I thought would be the best finish for all parties involved.
Well, I'll tell you what, the best finish for every party involved at your house starts with a little Blue Chew. It's like a hot tag for your wiener. We're talking a swanton bomb on the dong, boys and girls. Listen up. It's BlueChew.com. It's a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredient as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Think of Blue Chew whenever you want to have 3 matches back to back to back, like the Jeffs did that day. Take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process, guys, it's so simple. You just sign up at BlueChew.com, and then you consult with one of their licensed medical providers. Once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. So that means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made right here in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. Chew it and do it. And boy, do we have a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code MyWorld at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code MyWorld will receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast and Jeff's Raging Hard On. I have it on good authority, Jeff, that before you go through the curtain on Wednesday nights, you actually chew up a Blue Chew. You want to go out there and look vascular. You want to look full. You want to look hard. You want to make a good impression. And I hope that people start zooming in. I hope they start doing screen grabs and zooming in and trying to do a little, as Tony Schiavone calls it, hog watching on Double J. My brother's, he's ready to go with that Blue Chew, just in case. You never know, right? You never know.
There's only one Conrad Thompson, and there's only one Blue Chew.
Jeff, is it hard to do a sunset flip with a hard on? I've never done one. I don't know. Can you? What would be the hardest move to pull off with an erection, Jeff? Most difficult move in wrestling with an erection. Pile driver. Nobody wants to feel that on their neck, right?
Frog splash.
Oh, I don't want that. Yeah, that's it. That was the answer. I already know what we're talking about next week. Okay, so let's talk about Impact November 24th, 2011. There's a backstage segment with the referee Rudy Charles, friend of the show, holding up the turkey suit, and it's announced we're going to do the annual Thanksgiving Day Loser Wears a Turkey Suit gimmick match. It's Robbie E versus Young, and the loser has to wear it. And it appears that Hardy was going to come out next wearing his mask, but when unmasking, it's JArrett dressed up as Hardy, and JArrett does a promo. When Hardy attacks him, they're brawling around. Bully and Daniels come out. That leads to RVD and Styles and Anderson making the save. And the main event is a Survivor Series style elimination match.
Okay. I got it backwards. Okay.
RVD, Styles, Hardy, and Anderson beat Rude, JArrett, Daniels, and Ray. And yeah, dude, this is pretty fun.
So real quick, the three fall match was a pay-per-view, and
2 weeks prior to this.
Yes. My retaliation was the angle.
Yes.
Mocked him. Okay.
Yeah. And now it looks like Jeff is going to be in world title contention. And he is. Final resolution. Jeff Hardy versus Jeff Jarrett in a steel cage. It's available now on the Impact channel over on YouTube, if you'll go check that out. The Jeffs go 10 minutes and 18 seconds in a cage match, and the only winning by escaping step was changed to you're able to win by pin, submission, or escaping the cage. Sting is going to be handcuffed to Karen Jarrett because we got to keep our eye on her.
Oh, boy.
You know what happens there. Crowd's going crazy here because you see some really crazy bumps, including him coming off the top of the cage with a swanton that misses. The crowd's just going bananas for this. Eventually he starts to recover. You hit the stroke. You're crawling for the door. Hardy's going to dive and pull your leg and bring you back in. The door to the outside's open, and you're going to throw Hardy at the door. He knocks Sting off the apron. Karen gets the key to the handcuffs out of Sting's pocket, uncuffs herself, slams the door on Hardy's head like the Von Erichs. Hardy kicks out. Then she grabs the guitar to give it to you, but Sting recovers, pulls the guitar away. With you distracted, Hardy hits a twist of fate and gets the pin. 3.25 stars. Yeah. So how about that? You're losing on pay-per-view again. I thought, are they not getting the memo here? This is a vehicle to put you over.
So, Conrad, how close are we to being the last pay-per-views in Orlando? Because there were the last few, they were rocking and rolling, and I'm thinking that guys were taking Impact out on the road and basically pulling out of Orlando, which they acted like that was the problem, but it really wasn't. But anyway, Hardy was super over in this match.
I think April the next year is when y'all left. So this is December. Yeah.
Yeah.
So December of 11, you're still in Orlando. You got a handful to go, but April of 2012, you'll be in Nashville for lockdown.
Yeah. Okay. So we were beginning. Yeah. We were winding down, but it's a good one. And he's over.
The steps here were if Jeff Hardy wins, he gets a title shot at Genesis, which is going to be the January 8th pay-per-view. But if he loses, he has to leave TNA. And it's written here that was countered with either Jeff or Karen JArrett being fired by Sting at the December 15th show if JArrett lost. The firing was either done backstage or not taped at press time, but it's believed that Jeff JArrett will be the one fired since he had to leave for the taping for the new India-based offshoot promotion he's in charge of. So that's sort of the story, how we unwind your experience with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that cage match here from December of 2011, that's the last time you're in a ring with Jeff Hardy until that now infamous Texas Chainsaw Massacre death match.
Wait, yeah, that's right. So we hadn't faced each other in 10 years, right?
Over 10 years.
That's which was crazy for me to
wrap your head around. You just assume, well, no, of course we have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Let's do a couple questions. Francis Reyes wants to know, what do you think of Jeff's world title reigns and impact in WWE, and what is his legacy as world champion?
Hindsight's 2020, and creatively speaking, something I referenced earlier, Jeff's going to get over with or without a belt, with or without a program, with or without a storyline. He is really what his persona, or whatever you want to call it, the charismatic enigma. He's just got such a uniqueness to him, but he moves needles across the board. So did he have a legendary world title reign in any of those? I don't believe so. Jeff's the guy that the chase for Jeff was always much, 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 much more compelling.
Jason wants to know, this is Jeff's 30th year in pro wrestling. Jeff Hardy's been wrestling 30 years. How surreal is that for you to hear?
That's crazy. That is wild. And yeah. Wow.
Right?
30 years, old Nero. And I'd say he's taken his fair share of some high-risk moves, and he's still in good shape.
I would think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
By the way, you get all these shows early and ad-free. We're doing a new episode every week, of course, and lots of bonus content, like the book with David Crockett. I'm taping not one, but 2 of those this week. We've got some fabulous Insiders episodes that are posted for you to enjoy, including Dan Bynum, who's a legend who doesn't get the recognition he maybe deserves for all of his innovations. Before him, wrestling cameramen were not standing on the apron. Before him, the ring was not mic'd for sound. Before him, there were 2 camera shoots, not 5 camera shoots. All of that and more, including music videos. He did the first music videos discussed with the Insiders episodes over on adfreeshows.com. We also just posted a new Ask Conrad this past Monday for you to enjoy. And speaking of Monday, every single Monday, you either get Mike Chioda or Nick Patrick, and you get to pick their brain. Man, they were the 3rd guy in the ring for the height of your fandom in both WWF and WCW. And now you get to pick their brain. And how about every Tuesday? We've got Tuesdays with the Taskmaster. We started today's show with a clip. We'll finish with that clip today. You can get the full episode and several episodes, all available now at adfreeshows.com. By the way, if your business targets men 25 to 54 years old, there's no better place to advertise than right here with us. You hear some of the same advertisers week in, week out, because it really works. Find out how affordable it can be for your business at advertisewithjarrett.com. Love to have your questions too. We're going to be doing an Ask Jeff Anything sooner rather than later. We're also going to be talking about his 2017 departure from Impact, and we're going to try to not get served in the process. Look for our show handles at MyWorldPod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Of course, the easiest, cheapest, best way to support the show is to throw us a like, hit the subscribe button, turn the notifications bell on, ask a question, by God, over at myworldonyoutube.com. It's one thing to hear the show. It's another to see it. Check it out at myworldonyoutube.com. And of course, we've got tons of new merch over at boxofgimmicks.com, including Dave Green's favorite, a lot of chatter. It's a whole new world. Do you know what today is? As folks are listening to this?
Paul Heyman's birthday. Oh, no, Paul Heyman.
That was yesterday. Today, as folks are listening to this.
Oh, I know it's. Hey, this is monumental.
Is the first day that Vince McMahon doesn't own WWE. In my whole life. They're closing the merger officially today. TKO is the new company. Ari Emanuel is the new big boss. Process that, boys and girls. For the first time you've been in the wrestling business, Jeff Jarrett, Vince McMahon has a boss as of today.
Can I take it one step further?
Please do.
Today is the first day that the wrestling business can no longer say it's a family business.
Oh,
The McMahons were truly the last of the territories. Now, it grew and went national, then went global and went public. But at the end of the day,
it's the last territory.
yep, on Christmas or Thanksgiving or holidays, whether the McMahon sat around the kitchen table or not, it was still a family run business.
Crazy.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, it's just hard to really wrap your head around.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
And don't get me wrong, wrestling's still a family business to the Aspers who own Impact. It's still a family business to AAA, to AEW. But to your point, this is the last of the American territory system.
That's what, yeah.
And I know it's been publicly traded and blah, 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 but boy, he just had all the control and the majority of the ownership. And that is no longer the case today.
Correct.
And it's the first time that has been the case. And all I can think is I say to myself, how much longer until Double J is in the big seat over there? Because I know you got a pea shooter just the size of Ari Emanuel's ribcage. And you're going to get up there. But see, you've leveled your fleecing game up. You're out of the box office money. Now you're looking for stocks, baby. Stocks. When's your contract up? Don't say it. All the clickbaits will get it. But hypothetically, it would not surprise me.
You stop.
I'm just saying. You're going to be wrestling a vampire and a zombie and so much more on Friday Night SmackDown for the Pluto World Championship. And you know what? It might come down to you and Triple H in a salad steel cage match.
Listen at you. You fantasy booking over there, pal.
I don't know what to think.
Yeah, I know.
You know, my whole life it's been like, I made this comparison once and people sort of poked fun at it. Throw that photo of Vince McMahon back up there again, Marcus. Vince McMahon is our Walt Disney.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of looks like Walt right there.
Yep.
But I'm just saying, and I know he's still in control and. But boy, everybody wanted to know, what's it going to look like when? And I think even though we don't have all the answers, we have a much clearer answer now, don't we? TKO, Endeavor. That's the answer.
Change is in the air, and it always happens that way. When I just kind of got a download Saturday, I don't know if you got to know, but I whooped your boy Cody out on the lake on a tubing afternoon. But I had a nice weekend, Conrad, and get to have a couple of phone calls here and there and decompress and think things through, and kind of got to catch up on CMLL, and that's a family run business. And with that catch up call does come a kind of a AAA, that always kinds updates there. And, as much change that has taken place, I'll call it coming out of the pandemic. You just look at our industry, and I think 2024, and I know where are you talking about? We've still got fourth quarter of 2023. The business will continue to rapidly change in multiple ways, and what an upswing it's been on. But Conrad, let me ask you something. And this is, I don't know if we should get any deeper than just this. Would you rather be currently on the merger working for UFC or WWE?
Do I get to pick what department?
Oh, well, that probably that's of course Connie would come back with the greatest.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't think there's a creative department in UFC.
Yeah.
So if you work in WWE creative, you're probably okay. If you work in WWE travel, they probably book a lot more travel than UFC travel, so you're probably okay. But boy, if you're in legal, coin flip. If you're in marketing, coin flip. If you're in HR, coin flip. I hate it because we're talking tongue in cheek about a lot of people losing their jobs.
Yeah, and that's why it's go ahead.
But that's a huge opportunity for AEW. You know, the narrative has been that AEW is still a growing company and maybe needs some help filling some holes infrastructure wise. But this is such a unique industry. Where do you find those people who have that experience? And if you're a really tenured person who's been with the same company for, we'll call it more than a decade, why in the world would you, where you feel like you're tenured and you've been here forever, you don't roll the dice on something new. So you probably just hang around and keep doing what you've been doing because it's working. And this is how you support your family and. Saying all that to say, I think there's a chance that the big winner in this big merger could wind up being AEW because Tony can still operate off of gut and feel, and maybe there's less corporate decision making and more and less of a stringent budget. And there's some real talent that maybe is a big value add for AEW from folks who might be losing their job. So I want to be clear. I want what's good for wrestling, and what's good for wrestling is creating more jobs. And I'm hopeful, and I'm crossing my fingers and hoping against hope that when these layoffs come, because we do think there will be efficiencies. We're not trying to speak that into existence. That's just normally what happens when there's a merger.
Sure.
And if that happens, I hope that most, if not all of those folks, find a new happy home with AEW. And that makes AEW a stronger organization as a result, more infrastructure and more efficiency and more cost savings. Because make no mistake, a merger happens for cost savings. But if those same jobs, when they just get realigned with AEW, if that were to happen, create more cost savings and efficiencies for AEW, it's a win for everybody.
Yep.
And I would love to see that be the case. I don't want to see anybody lose their job. I just think that's terrible. I mean, there are real people who pay for real babies and real insurance and real housing and clothing and food. I'm talking about just basic necessities here. It's a lot bigger than just, I don't like that storyline. I mean, these are folks paying their bills. So I'm pulling for that, Jeff. I'm going to be optimistic. And I'm going to say that these folks who maybe get their walking papers, maybe they get a new soft landing spot in Jacksonville. You got any words of wisdom? You've never been in the bushes very long. You always land in a good spot. What's your words of wisdom to any of those folks who maybe are looking at that?
2, delusional optimism. No, it's the only mindset. We could come up with so many old sayings, but I think old sayings don't get to be old sayings unless they're true.
Right.
You can't walk through a new door unless you leave the old door. It's impossible to climb a mountaintop unless you're in a valley. Change is inevitable. Good things happen. This is the most simplistic thing. Nothing happens if you don't take action. Take massive, radical action. And that to me is one of my mantras. You gotta shake the bushes, try to make something happen, have some patience here and there. It's definitely not the end of the world. There's so much opportunity. That's how the end of my call happened Saturday. Well, one thing's for sure, there's going to be a lot of opportunity coming up in this industry because it ain't getting smaller.
Well said, boys and girls. That's the reason you tune in to The Last Outlaw. It's a whole new world next week. When we click record, Vince McMahon won't be the big boss in WWE anymore. What? He has a boss. It's a whole new world. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more in the coming weeks. We're going to be doing an Ask Jeff Anything. Get your questions in now at My World Pod. We're also going to be talking about his departure from Impact in 2017. A lot to unpack here, as I like to say. It's going to be an interesting fall here on My World, and I'm sure I'll have to hear that godforsaken Rocky Top song a few more times.
Love it. Go Big Orange.
Will you stop? We'll see you next week right here on My World.
Peace.
Earlier in today's episode, we heard from Kevin Sullivan on how the idea for the NWO spray-painted belt came to be. But where did the actual spray paint come from?
I think he sent somebody else. I'm trying to think. I think he sent Nick Patrick out to get some spray paint. And that's how it went. It was that simple.
So there you have it. From the mind of Kevin Sullivan to the wallet of Nick Patrick, the story of how the spray-painted NWO belt came to be. Be sure to catch Tuesday with the Taskmaster every Tuesday, along with other series and thousands of hours of bonus content, exclusively on adfreeshows.com.
Double J, Jeff Jarrett here to tell you about SaveWithConrad.com. You've heard Conrad talk about the total nonstop savings they've provided current homeowners. But did you know Conrad and his team can also help My World listeners become homeowners? They make buying a home easier than getting the bag after a good housekeeping match. But don't take the Last Outlaw's word for it.
Franklin Dove, Orlando, Florida. After listening to all of Conrad's podcasts and hearing the different stories that he shared, I felt the time was right for me to explore buying a home again, and reached out, and one thing led to another, and finally closed last week. It was excellent. Everything flowed smoothly. From my first contact, I just put in the initial request online. Francis reached out. We started the application process, got the approval moving. Holly was great. Larry Thompson was amazing. Everything was smooth. Communication was perfect. Really, it was a much better experience than anything that I could have imagined. My name is Franklin Dove in Orlando, Florida, and I got into my dream home thanks to SaveWithConrad.com.
That's right. In My World, it doesn't get any better than 5 stars. Don't let your landlord get over on you. Walk out on that bad deal and stop throwing your money away on rent today with SaveWithConrad.com. That's right. It's SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. Woo!